Good morning, welcome to Headline Focus here live on Core Politics with me, Rob Double. It is the 21st of June 2018. Let's have a look at what's making the news. And start off with Brexit has finally, in terms of the withdrawal bill, come to an end between the Lords and the Commons. Yesterday, Dominic Grieve and other Conservative rebels backed down and agreed to on their meaningful vote amendments, which was, of course, was causing all this problem with regards to the Commons and the Lords and this ping-pong legislation of the EU withdrawal bill. They've backed down and have accepted the government's amendments, put forward government assurances over Parliament having a say, and indeed ended up voting with the government in order to pass the EU withdrawal bill. So that is now done and dusted for Theresa May. A significant moment in the Brexit legislative process that this has gone through the Commons, it's gone through Parliament, and it's now been pretty much approved. It's now been, again, the second round of debate in the Commons. The government has indeed won the day as well. Now, what actually happened? Well, reports are that Dominic Grieve, who's a former Attorney General, he's a very clued-up guy, was convinced by last-minute legal advice he was given, which suggested that the government's concession, the government's negotiation and what they offered the Tory rebels in terms of what they were looking for, would allow Parliament to table a motion delaying Brexit if need be. If there might be a reason, for whatever reason that could be, the negotiations aren't doing too well, there's a complexity, there's a need for further clarification on some information, there can be an amendment put in to delay Brexit. However, that is a possibility. There's still a little bit of nuance, a little bit of confusion as to what the actual amendment will be, what the actual guarantees were given by the government. But Cabinet Office Minister Oliver Letwin is being basically hailed as the person who was brokering this deal on behalf of the government and the Conservative rebels to avoid this defeat. Now, Theresa May, Prime Minister, has said this was a crucial step to achieving a smooth and orderly Brexit, and certainly she'll be happy now that this legislation has come through. It's been a big headache for her, and indeed the government over the past couple of weeks. Real possibilities that certain things, or if you look back as well in the past 6 months or so, what the commentary is saying about the possibility of the government being defeated on a single market vote or customs union vote and meaningful vote. All of these big issues, the government's managed to steer their way through the legislative process and still have a negotiating position which they feel they have the integrity of as well. And what's going to happen next? The next step is the European Council Summit. That's next week. And this will be, again, the EU 27 as well as the UK coming together to review the process of the EU negotiations, Brexit negotiations, how they're going, and also clarify and confirm any agreements which have happened since the last Council Summit meeting. But there's a significant moment in the Commons yesterday, and hopefully a big tick, or rather the Prime Minister will be hoping a big tick for her in terms of getting Brexit done. Next up, though, not so great a headline in the Financial Times front page today regarding the Prime Minister. Reports are that Theresa May asked Gavin Williamson, the Defence Secretary, to justify Britain's role as a Tier 1 military power. Now, this had shockwaves down the Ministry of Defence, but basically the Prime Minister, in these reports, asked Gavin Williamson to rethink military capabilities and to think about the focus of more future warfare, particularly cyber warfare, and what that means in terms of the allocation of budgets and indeed capabilities. Now, this created shockwaves through and indeed, so there's a report in the FT saying that an MOD official said people had hands in their heads because it was interpreted to some extent as Theresa May questioning the need for a Tier 1 military power. And by that I mean the top, or it's sort of a pretty loose term, but it's kind of mean the top power with multiple capabilities across land, sea, a separate navy, separate air force, separate army, and also military capabilities as well. The shockwaves that have come through is, what does the Prime Minister mean by that? Does it mean a shift in somehow the Ministry of Defence going to have to rethink the prominence of the military power that the UK has, etc., etc., etc.? Downing Street, however, they've acknowledged it's a difficult meeting, acknowledged that there was a challenge put to Gavin Williamson by the Prime Minister over Mr Williams' plans, particularly on spending and capabilities. However, Downing Street have said it's categorically untrue to suggest Britain's position as a leading defence nation is somehow in question. Now, the context of this is known. There's been a very public spat going on between Gavin Williamson, who's fighting a very public campaign for more cash for the Ministry of Defence to pay for more armed forces capabilities. That's a big discussion with Whitehall, but particularly the Treasury, wanting something like up to 20 billion in the next decade for the armed forces in all Ministry of Defence in order to ensure capabilities grow and stay at a good level. But also there's the NATO summit next month as well, something which Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is causing some shockwaves himself of, because he's of course questioned the US's commitment to some extent on NATO when other NATO members are not contributing the 2% defence budget of their GDP, which they are expected to as part of being part of NATO. Gavin Williamson and Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson are in Poland actually today to discuss strengthening security ties with Britain's most important NATO ally in Eastern Europe, which is of course Poland. But this is certainly an interesting issue, NATO and what's going to be happening to it, particularly when Donald Trump comes to the UK, as he plans to in July. This will be a key discussion point, as well as the NATO summit, as to what his plans are in terms of the US commitment to NATO, which is such an important backer to that organisation. And finally, one more story. The European Union, according to reports, are looking to ban memes. Now, the EU Legal Affairs Committee approved a proposal put forward by the European Commission, which looks to regulate, to some extent, the internet over copyright material, which would, as many people are suggesting, or rather many people are suggesting, would ban memes. Now, this is specifically referring to Article 13 of the Copyright Directive, which is the European Union legislation. It will force internet providers to automatically censor content which is deemed to be a copyright violation and stopping it from being uploaded. So it'll be at upload source, the internet giant or the tech company or whatever the platform is would have to screen all the content to ensure it doesn't have any copyright material. If it does, they would have to then either remove it or go through a process of having some compensation for whoever's copyright material that is. Tech giants would have to share revenues with publishers and bear liability for the internet content as well. Now, in terms of criticism, it's been pretty heavy from some big internet figures. Many experts, including Tim Berners-Lee, who's actually the inventor of the World Wide Web, and indeed Jimmy Wales, who's Wikipedia's founder, have signed an open letter to the European Parliament's President Tajani to oppose the measures. So in terms of that, pretty strong criticism. There is a big concern over freedom of speech, particularly over the internet, about what the European Union is doing here. And for many, or rather for some, it's a case of European overreach, trying to regulate the internet in a way that is both perhaps impractical, but also very, very concerning in terms of free speech and freedom of expression online. Something very interesting, no doubt some more lines on that over the next few days as well. That's pretty much it for today. You're up to date. Don't forget you can find all the latest on what we're doing here on Core Politics on our Facebook page and Twitter right here. But from me and all the team here at Core London, have a fantastic start to Thursday. See you tomorrow about 9 o'clock.